Now let's bring in Mark Kelly, the retired astronaut who became a leader in preventing gun violence after his wife, former Congresswoman Gabby Giffords, was severely injured by a deranged shooter in 2011. Mark, you just heard Oliver North. Here's what President Trump said after the shooting.
My administration is determined to do everything in our power to protect our students, secure our schools, and to keep weapons out of the hands of those who pose a threat to themselves and to others.
Mark, your reaction?
Well, on the surface, those sound like reasonable words. I mean, keeping guns, weapons out of the hands of people that pose a threat. You did not hear Ali say that. Ali talked about the school being the problem and not the fact that we have proliferated guns throughout society. I'm a gun owner. Like Ali, I'm a supporter of the Second Amendment. But we make it so easy for irresponsible people and criminals to get access to firearms.
But let me pick up on that, because let's review the facts of this specific case. The shooter in this case had a shotgun and a pistol. There were no assault weapons. The guns had been bought legally by his father. He was on the school football team. He was on the honor roll. There were no red flags. The fact is, most of the things that you generally talk about would not have prevented this shooting.
In general, but one thing that could be done, I mean, the state of Texas, as an example, could pass a piece of legislation that requires parents to safely store their firearms if they have a child in the house. I mean, this kid was 17 years old. He shouldn't have access to a semi-automatic shotgun and a .38 revolver. I mean, there is legislation. I mean, it works. It works in the states that have less gun violence. They have stronger laws.
But you're talking about Texas. People go hunting. The idea that a 17-year-old is not going to have access to his dad's shotgun, and that we're going to have a law preventing that?
Well, I mean, it exists in some places. I mean, I go hunting as well, but all my firearms are locked in a safe. And if I don't even have a kid in the house anymore. I mean, if I did, I would even probably, even double down on that. I mean, there are things that work when we allow irresponsible people to get their hands on firearms, and criminals. I mean, your last guest is about to take over as the president of an organization that is against background checks for gun sales. I mean, the most common sense thing that we can do to protect society, they are so strongly against. And then they advocate for an alternative, reality, that the problem is the school and the access point.
Well, wait,
certainly we can take steps.
Mark, I want to pick up on that, though, because as I discussed with Oliver North, this is the 16th school shooting so far this year. There clearly is a copycat aspect to this. One disturbed student seeing what another disturbed student did and following in that deranged path. And the question does become at a certain point, particularly as I point out where a lot of the things, assault weapons, red flags wouldn't have worked in this case. Do we need to harden our schools the way we do our airports with metal detectors and limited access to get in and out of the school?
Absolutely. I mean, I think we should make it more difficult. I mean, figure out a way to prevent people coming in the door with a firearm. At the same time, make sure that irresponsible person can't get the gun in the first place. I mean, there are a lot of reasons why we have the level of gun violence that we currently have in this country. It's not one reason. We have 38,000 people dying every year from gun violence. Another 110,000 people are shot and injured. I can tell you this, and this is from somebody who owns 8 firearms. It's not because we don't have enough guns in our society. I mean, we have more guns than almost every other country. If the issue was more firearms in more places, which is what Ali North and the NRA advocates for, we would live in the safest country on the planet.
I have got about a minute left, and I want to ask you one final question. Gun control has generally not been a big pro-gun control, a big voting issue in elections. You just heard Oliver North say that he is on a campaign to try to reassure politicians that being part or associated with the NRA is a plus, not a minus. He wants to add 1 million more members. voters, do you think you can make pro-gun control issues a key voting issue in this campaign?
Well, I mean, gun safety already is. I mean, we saw that in November in Virginia. We're going to see this here in November. These kids from Parkland, who, by the way, Ali referred to as terrorists, I believe is what he said about them several weeks ago. I mean, these kids are motivated. They're smart, they're articulate, and they're angry. And they have a right to be angry. The kids in Santa Fe, I lived 10 miles from that school for 15 years. Those kids have a right to be angry about this. And the alternative reality, right. I mean, Rex Tillerson just gave a speech at VMI, a commencement speech. And he talked about how alternative realities are a threat to democracy. And I think what the NRA is proposing is an alternative reality.
Mark, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today. And unfortunately, we will stay on top of this continuing story.